Hello, and welcome to this showcase and brief gameplay demonstration of my new game, On the Way. On the Way is a Cold War tactical role-playing game in which you take on the role of one tank commander in charge of his crew and his tank at the tail end of 1968 and potentially bleeding into 1969. The game is set in the West and East German border, the Divide, particularly in the Fulda Gap region. Players who are familiar with the Avalon Hill classic Patton's Best will feel right at home with On the Way. But On the Way doesn't seek to just be a simple clone or a copy of Patton's Best, but is instead its own unique game that introduces its own new concepts, new gameplay, new mechanics. It's a separate game which takes inspiration from an already outstanding tank game and sets it into a new era. The game is also modular so that it could potentially support other eras, including the 1970s, 1980s, and of course going back into World War II as well. On the Way includes a comprehensive rulebook, as so, with some 32 pages of rules. You don't need to know every single thing in the rulebook, of course, but you just reference as needed, and of course not everything applies in each game. You can see here a list of, you have your introduction, abstractions, explaining kind of my idea, my goals of the game, what I want to impart, to build story and setting, terms and abbreviations, things to know, D standing for driver, L for large, that sort of thing. There's a detailed sequence of play to guide you through a combat mission or through the weekly combat calendars, which I will also be showing in the rulebook, or in the video, excuse me. There's again, the sequence of play is intentionally detailed, so you can simply just follow along. Everything is laid out as clearly and concisely as I could make it, God willing, to ensure a swift, smooth gameplay. On the Way doesn't intend to bog down the player, but instead present a very realistic tank experience through comprehensive research, but while not bogging down the player. You're not going to feel that you're playing a game of whack-a-mole, for instance, with constantly appearing enemies. You can see various types of information about the unit cards. The units in the game are, even though they are presented on counters, they are also, all their information is located on various cards, like so. This is a player tank card. They're front and back, M60A1, Leopard 1. Same T-62 for the Soviet Union and the T-55A model for East Germany. And then these are your enemy vehicle units. All are front and back, listing various types of vehicles as well as their armor protection, 2 kill numbers versus your tank, their weapon size, the kind of ammunition that they're using, and notes that you may wish to know about the vehicle. The T-10 heavy tank, for instance, is an average size tank and has night vision capabilities. There are 2 different types of night vision included in the game. Night vision, just plain as this is representative of active night vision devices, infrared spotlights, as opposed to Night NV Plus, which represents infrared passive night vision devices. Much harder to detect, much more efficient at night, as well as seeing through smoke and rain and falling snow and that sort of thing. Of course, in 1968, infrared night vision devices are few and far between, if extant at all, but as I said, the game is meant to encompass potentially future expansions in various different eras. So there are 5 enemy vehicle cards. You have your infantry units here, troops, heavy machine guns, various types of light anti-tank weapons, as well as anti-tank guns and recoilless rifles, which still fall under the anti-tank category, which are held under the umbrella category of infantry unit. The rulebook, when you're referencing things on the tank cards, you can go through and see explanations of the various parts of the tank card, what certain things mean. For instance, on the M60A1, you can see large tank in reference to its size, 14.6 in the rulebook. Your HE grade, this is used when you're firing high explosive rounds, which would be high explosive plastic, for instance, would be your most effective here. I mean, this is a number that's used against vehicles, but HE grade is used against infantry targets. Of course, high explosive anti-tank and anti-tank guided missiles are less effective against infantry than high explosive rounds, and more effective, or equally as effective as that, are your machine guns, which come into play in the game. You have information on laser rangefinders, hatches, engine smoke screens, which are present on at this time period anyway, on the Soviet tanks, and not yet on NATO, US, and West German vehicles for the most part. You have an explanation on the types of combat missions in the game: attack, advance, counterattack, and breakout. Each has it represents a different type of mission. For instance, in an advanced combat mission, your outfit is tasked with exploiting a breakthrough in the front line and seizing a specific objective behind enemy lines. The enemy is on the defensive, and resistance is scattered and likely consists of rear guards conducting delaying actions. There's information on setting up the mission, where certain things go on the strategic movement map, which you can see underneath the rulebook, which I will be showing up close in a moment. Victory point modifiers, mission end conditions, any kind of special requirements, that sort of thing. In counterattack and breakout missions, you are yourself on the defensive, holding your ground, or in a breakout mission attempting to pull back in the face of an enemy offensive, whereas in an advance or an attack combat mission, you are moving through enemy territory. In an advance, you're, as I had just read, you're utilizing a poorly defended section of the front line, for instance, spearheading a breakthrough, whereas in an attack combat mission you have a specific objective that you're seizing, which you're, of course, also seizing a specific objective in an advance, but an attack is more of a combined arms style, full frontal kind of meeting engagement. Information on, pardon me, information on fuel usage and the weather and time as you move around the strategic movement map, an explanation of the tactical combat map, as well as when you're referencing directions of incoming shells, as it has to do with crew wounds and what side of the tank, the front or the sides here, or the rear of the tank, where it's penetrated, how that affects crew wounds. How that affects the chances of the shell, depending on the type of the ammunition incoming, if it penetrates your tank, and if it causes a knockout, a kill, or if it only potentially wounds some crewmen or damages some components, like the tank's running gear or a turret ring, traverse, that sort of thing. Information on spotting. Ambushes, you can ambush the enemy, and likewise the enemy can ambush you. A comprehensive list of orders and how those are carried out, the prerequisites for those orders, how movement works, how to fire and hit an enemy, or an enemy to fire and hit you or your friendly units, for instance. How to kill, it's all explained here. Various types of shells, kinetic energy and chemical energy shells, enemy actions, what all the enemy units can do, and what, when you roll a certain type of action, what that means. Here's a list as well of enemy units, including under the types tanks and self-propelled guns, armored personnel carriers, trucks, troops, heavy machine guns, and anti-tank guns. How to place enemies. This is the bailing out minigame, how that functions. Casualties, random events, weather events, and of course here's a list of ranks, ratings, decorations, promotions, that sort of thing. The tables for On the Way are where you will be referencing most combat actions and actions that you take on the strategic movement map, on the tactical combat mat, on the Bailout mat. You have information on when the combat missions start and what the weather is like on that particular day, enemy resistance, unit activation, spotting, the types of vehicles. If you become bogged down, rolling to unbog yourself, which is affected by the ratings, the skill, veterancy of your crew, and the type of the consistency of the ground. It's more more difficult in mud and snow and that sort of thing. Incoming fire against your tank from enemy units. And this is separated by the types of weapons: light anti-tank weapons, anti-tank guided missiles, and then weapon sizes from 40 millimeters or less up to 65 millimeters and above. So this is anything from 105 millimeters, 115 millimeters, and so on. Enemy actions are here, separated by mission type, because enemy units are going to be behaving in various different ways depending on the type of combat mission. If they're defensive, they're going to behave defensively. Resolution tables for enemies against your friendly vehicles and friendly supporting infantry. This is a combined arms unit, after all, an ad hoc task force. Tables for friendly units to kill enemy tables, random events. Here's various modifiers to the to kill tables. You'll notice there's a section here for white phosphorus, which you can use to panic enemy units, cause them to pull back from an engagement, to move further from your vehicle, or potentially force that crew to panic and abandon their vehicle, believing that it's on fire, or perhaps they are suffocating within. Tables for your tank to hit infantry. To kill infantry, this is the HE grade, high explosive grade, that I was referencing in the rulebook. Tables for your MGs against infantry, and these are against vehicles and to hit locations here. Wound locations, and the effect of the direction of the penetration that it has on crew injuries, and the severity of the wounds, as well as recovering from those wounds. When you're starting out and creating your crew, you reference here the starting crewman rating table, which is broken down by nation here. Various different nations have, as kind of an overgeneralization, really, have different ratings broken down by their nations. So you'll find lots of conscripts, for instance, in the Warsaw Pact, and an increasing number, but not yet as intense number of conscripts in the U.S. and West German armies. Resolution tables for your tank. If it's penetrated and the results of that, you might have what's called a normal knockout, normal KO, in which your tank is just destroyed as outright, and now you proceed to bail out. You could have a possible KO in which your tank is penetrated, but it's not enough to knock it out, but you still check for crew wounds and that sort of thing. And then there's minor damage, in which your tank has its gun sight broken, turret ring malfunctions, fuel tank penetrated, which could lead to an explosion or a fire, for instance. These are the interior actions in the tank for when you're bailing out. Smoke and fire, again, this is all for bailing out of the tank, which is included in its own minigame. So those are the tables. This here is the strategic movement map of Central Europe in the Fulda Gap region. The way that this would work is you would go ahead and place your task force marker wherever you roll for the mission start, at the start of your mission, for instance, and you would roll for wherever your objective might be. For instance, if this were an advance combat mission, just to give some idea of how this works, when you're generating your starting area and your objective area, you would roll 1d6 equal to a red numbered area on the strategic movement map. And then for your objective area, you would roll 2d6, add 1 to that, and then move that many areas clockwise from the start area along the strategic map edge to get your objective area. So, as an example to show that, you would have your 2d6s here. You would roll that. You rolled a 5, that's and a 1 for 6, plus 1 is 7. So then you would move 7 areas clockwise from the starting area. Assuming that we started here in 5, this would be like if we rolled 5 first. So then you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this would be your objective area down here. And once your task force reached this area, then the mission would end after you have captured that area. But the mission can also end beforehand if the time of day gets too late. If you bail out of the tank beforehand. If the time of day does get too late, that doesn't necessarily end the game. This on the way includes, unlike Patton's Best, you can fight at night. Some missions start at night and continue on from there. So night fighting is fully modeled in the game. The tactical combat mat is where you will be resolving your engagements. There's a lot of information on the tactical combat mat. You have a simple sequence of play here to kind of keep you on track for how you're playing the game. Make sure you're following the right steps. You have boxes here for placing appropriate counters on, for keeping track of various destroyed or damaged components of your tank, or like for instance, if you have here your tank mobility, if you become if your track is destroyed for some reason, you might place an immobilized counter there as a reminder that your tank was immobilized. You would do the same for if you were to bog down. Placing your tank on the tactical combat mat is as simple as just using one of the player tank counters there, and then if you wish, you also have a turret counter. You would place your turret counter on top of your tank like so, and then rotate it as needed into the various sectors of the map, like that, of the mat. You don't need to use the turret counter if you don't want to. If your turret's pointing forward, then you can simply remove it, and it's just kind of implied that your turret is facing in that direction. You can keep track of your loaded round. For instance, if you have a white phosphorus shell loaded, you would place that there, and then if your loader is loading, he has a load order, which he does by default, then you have your next round here indicates that it is the same as the one that's loaded right now. So he will just load another round of white phosphorus, unless you place a new round in the next round box there, armor piercing, composite rigid. Now he will load that starting in the next round, and that'll be ready for you then. You can keep track of your main armament here. If the things are malfunctioned, and you would place a malfunction marker on there. Or after a case of a failed repair, you might flip the marker over to its broken side, and you can no longer use the main gun for the rest of the combat mission, which would enable you, after the engagement in which your main gun breaks, to end the combat mission early. For you, your tank is no longer of much use. You also have 2-kill formulas down here, 2-kill armored vehicles as a reminder, 2-kill unarmored vehicle formula, and to immobilize armored and unarmored vehicles. Note that any unmodified roll of 12 for your tank versus enemy units, and enemy units versus your tank, is an automatic no effect. So that's there for reference. Ranges are given here, and they're broad, what distances they represent. Short range in this in these sectors here being equal to or less than 500 meters, medium range here being between 6 and 1500 meters, and long range being 1600 meters plus, but no further than 3500 meters. This here is the crew track sheet, you might say. You can keep track of your crew members here, which you can name, note their ranks, their ratings, fatigue as they accumulate it. You can keep track of your the date and mission information. So, for instance, if the weeks you would write, for instance, the year is 1968, and I recommend laminating these and using an expo marker so that they can be easily erased. Month is November, and it is week 4, which is the start of the campaign. You would note your strategic posture for the week, which is ascertained with the combat campaign calendar here. You would reference here the strategic posture. You roll for strategic postures, the resistance level at the strategic level, which this is beyond the concern of your tank crew, because you are. The game is on the way is set at the individual man level, so you are not commanding a general, sitting in a tent looking at little NATO markers moving around on a map. You are an actual man in your tank looking through the war as it is through your periscope, open hatch, that sort of thing. So the strategic posture and resistance level affects the combat mission types that you will have to undertake, and the combat mission resistance levels. These are affected by victory perception. You can keep track of your victory perception points here, anywhere from losing decisively, stalemate, winning decisively, and everything in between. And there are also weekly campaign events, which are indicative of how the war is going around you, which you don't have control over, but you can influence the victory perception level. It's just that the weekly campaign events tend to influence it much more, and this includes anything from airborne drops, special forces, significant advances in penetrations in various different battlefields of around you in Europe, Scandinavia, or elsewhere in the world, as well as tactical nuclear strikes can occur. But some of these events, like tactical nuclear strikes, can only occur once in a campaign. So you can't have multiples of those. You can also, on the track sheet here, you can keep track of fuel as you spend it, as you move around the map. Various actions consume various levels of fuel. Moving on a highway consumes the least amount of fuel, but moving off-road consumes a lot of fuel, and it just keeps increasing depending on if there's mud or snow, that sort of thing. You can keep track of your smoke bombs if your tank has smoke mortars equipped along the sides of the turret or inside the turret or wherever it may be. Ammunition for your machine gun, 7.62 up to 14.5 millimeter, as well as a submachine gun, which is carried by the commander only. Main gun ammunition shells, ready rack, storage. All ammunition, your loader essentially, just as a rule, will always be reloading rounds from the ready rack if he can, until the ready rack is empty, and then he'll take from ordinary stowage. But before then, he's always going to be taking from the ready rack at all times, if it's possible. And then you have victory points here for keeping track of captured areas, lost areas, friendly units that are destroyed, and any enemy units that you destroy, which are modified. The victory point levels are modified by the type of combat mission. You get more victory points for destroying enemy units in counterattack scenario, combat missions, for instance, that sort of thing. The final sheet here I wanted to show is the Bailout mat. This is where the Bailout minigame takes place, but before that, you always place your vehicle, your tank card here in the tank interior box. And you may not necessarily be needing to bail out at all times. This is just where this card is stored, where you place your exposed markers on top of various hatches if your crew has hatches. This red box here, which is X'd out, indicates a section of the tank, the gunner, for instance, in the M60A1, who has no hatch. So you can't place an exposed marker on there because there's no hatch to open. The gunner's always, in effect, buttoned up, which is what BU stands for, whereas EXP stands for exposed. The commander here has a vision cupola, as represented by this broken circle. When you actually do have to bail out, you can place your bailout orders as they occur, or as you need them. Rescuing various crewmen, moving to new positions, bailing out of hatch, and your crew progressively move from the tank interior to the tank exterior and to a safe location. The tank exterior would be all the area immediately around the tank, and a safe location would be anywhere that's protected, no longer near the tank. For instance, behind another friendly vehicle, or in a ditch, or in a house, in a woods somewhere that's no longer here. And of course, this is all accomplished through no more than 10 turns. You have your interior location, or interior condition here for keeping track of the condition of your tank. Your tank could begin producing smoke, it could catch fire, and potentially explode. And that's influenced by how much ammunition you're carrying, how much is left, where your tank was penetrated, by what caliber of weapon, what kind of weapon, kinetic energy or chemical energy. But you should note that this doesn't progress in stages, and it doesn't go back in stages. For instance, if you roll that your tank catches fire, then the next turn that you roll and the roll indicates that your tank produces smoke, that doesn't happen. Your tank's already on fire. And likewise, you don't need to first have smoke to have fire, and you don't need to first have fire to have an explosion. So you don't regress backwards, and things don't move in steps. So that's just something to keep in mind. And your crew will move from the interior to the exterior in a safe location. And that's in the bailout minigame, if and when your tank is knocked out. So I want to give just kind of a quick, simple example of some common gameplay concepts. For instance, I'll begin here with spotting enemy units. This is, of course, assuming that we've already resolved any kind of ambush at the start of this hypothetical battle here. Time of day is day. We have normal ground conditions, the sky is clear, and the temperature is mild, just to keep things simple, which means that there's no special weather-based modifiers. So we would be on, first we would be on step 1, smoke depletion. Smoke always depletes in levels of 1, and smoke is always placed at a minimum of levels of 2. So, I mean, if we had smoke here and we had the smoke depletion phase, then we would rotate, we'd turn that over, flip the marker over to smoke times 1, and that would be the smoke depletion phase. And you would do that for every smoke marker that's on the tactical combat map. But to spot units, this is gonna be very quick. We'll assume that our tank commander has a rating of 7, and he has an unbuttoned hatch, and he is going to attempt to spot this unidentified and unspotted self-propelled gun. Certain types of vehicles like tanks and self-propelled guns and anti-tank guns always begin at this unidentified side. Other units do not begin this way, but these types of units do. So we've already spotted this Leopard 1 tank here. We're in a T-62. We have an armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding sabot round loaded in the breech. Turrets pointing forward, but we're going to attempt to spot this unit here first. So we'd go to the spotting table here. We can see this tank is moving. We do have this smoke, which is going to cause problems here. So we would roll 2d6, and if the enemy unit is spotted, if the 2d6 roll is less than or equal to the spotting crewman's rating, and the enemy unit is spotted and identified if the 2d6 roll is less than the spotting crewman's rating times 0.5, which means it would be half of his rating, but rounded up. So we'll just go ahead and roll our 2d6 here. We rolled 7. Our tank commander's rating is 7. He's unbuttoned. The tank is not moving. So we'll go ahead and look here. It's not an unmodified roll of 3 or less, and it's not an unmodified roll of 10 plus. 3 or less would mean that he's automatically spotted and identified, and 10 plus would mean that this unit is obstructed, so we can't see him at all. He's hidden behind a house, or a tree, or a fence, or a wall, or a hill, or woods, or something. But that doesn't apply here. And we also don't have to worry about mist or falling snow or night. None of these things apply right now. Our tank commander is not buttoned up so that we do not add this +2 modifier. The target unit is not in a building, fortification, woods, or has hull down status, and we are not moving. We don't add any of this. We do add +1 for this smoke here, so that would be 8. The target is small, so +1 for 9. The target is at long range, so medium and short does not apply. The target is moving though, so 9, 8, 7, 6. That brings us to a 6. So our roll is less than or equal to our tank commander's rating, which is 7, which means that we have spotted the unit, but we have not identified the unit. Now, of course, all of our other crewmen could also roll to spot this unit. If we hadn't spotted the unit, then we'd have, another crewman, if he's able to spot that unit. He rolls 4. Let's say he also has a rating of 7, and then he would roll low enough that to actually spot and identify the unit. So if he were to identify this unit, we would go ahead and proceed to the unit type tables and reference NATO here under self-propelled gun. Because it is a self-propelled gun, we would roll 2d6. We rolled 7, which means that we have activated a rocket, or a Raketenjagdpanzer, I think is how you pronounce that, meaning this is a rocket anti-tank guided missile carrier, essentially, tank destroyer outfitted with an anti-tank guided missile system. So we would place the applicable vehicle counter on that, in that zone, like so. So that's how you spot enemy units. In order to, so we move past the spotting phase. We'll issue our orders. When you issue orders, you would go ahead and place your orders on the appropriate tank card. Now, ordinarily, as I said, this would go on the Bailout mat, which we don't have out at the moment, but you would place your orders. So, I mean, I want my commander to direct fire at this Leopard 1, which is at medium range, so between 6 and 1,500 meters. So you would place your direct fire order on top of the commander. You can reference what orders do, what they involve, based on the crewman's position in the vehicle, what he's actually capable of doing. Not all crewmen can perform the same actions, and some crewmen are able to perform the actions of other crewmen if their rating is high enough, indicating that they're cross-trained to do so. So we'd give the order for the gunner to fire the main gun, the commander to direct fire, and the loader to load, and the driver to... We haven't given these two any orders, but their default orders are load and stop, respectively. So they will just do those things. So in order to actually attack this unit, we have to be able to see it. We have to have line of sight. We have to spot it, which we do. We see it. It is facing our front. Or its front is facing us. Our front is also facing it, and it's in the woods. So if we were to attack this enemy unit, we would proceed to the Your Tank 2-hit vehicle target table, and we would roll 2d6. It's at medium range here. There's nothing that we really have to worry about weather-wise. So we roll 2d6. We rolled 4. So then we would go to the Your Tank 2-hit vehicle target table, go to medium range. We're using direct fire because you have to use direct fire with kinetic energy rounds. We're firing APFSDS, firing Sabo. So this requires direct fire. You can use area fire with high explosive rounds against infantry and against vehicles, but it only hits vehicles if you get a critical hit, and even then that critical hit doesn't count as a critical hit. It just counts as an ordinary hit. So we rolled a 4. We would look here at direct fire 6+, using the high and very high velocity weapon column because we have a 115 millimeter high velocity gun. We did not roll high enough for rate of fire. If we had rolled a 10 or more, then we would be able to use rate of fire. This is explained in the rulebook. This is modified by your crewman, your gun crew's ratings. if you're taking ammunition from the ready rack, which you have to take ammunition from the ready rack to use rate of fire. If your loader's not loading from the ready rack, or the auto loader is not loading from the ready rack for later tanks, the Warsaw Pact tanks have auto loaders in later years, then you can use rate of fire with the ready rack. But if you can't use the ready rack, then no rate of fire is allowed. So we rolled a 4. We have to roll at least a 6+ to get direct fire. The enemy's in the woods, which makes it much more difficult for us to hit. We subtract 1 to that, we get a 3. We're firing APFSDS, which has a higher, because it has such a flat trajectory, it has a better chance to hit at long range, but that doesn't apply to medium range. So really this shot would not have hit, but I want to just show how to kill things. So we'll just say it did hit. You would roll for the location of the vehicle where you hit the vehicle. It's not hull down, so you don't use the hull down column here, because there's a chance that your shell will just strike whatever is concealing the hull of the vehicle. So we rolled a 4, which means that we hit the vehicle in the hull. We would go ahead then and go to the, because we're firing kinetic energy round. Yeah, whenever you fire a round, you should go ahead and reference these to kill modifier tables. Specifically the variable penetration, and also here we're firing at medium range, sabot. There's no modifier for the sabot round as it depending on the range, because certain types of shells lose kinetic energy as they're traveling. They slow down and tumble, and they lose their ability to penetrate effectively over great distances. That doesn't take effect until long range for the discarding sabot and fin stabilized discarding sabot. So we have a +0 for that. But we do need to reference here the variable penetration to kill armored vehicle table, because vehicles they face slightly different angles. They're at different heights, and this accounts for that. So on our tank, we can see here that our APFSDS has 33 as its base to kill number, and it's a kinetic energy round, as it's listed here, KE, whereas our heat round here is CE for chemical energy. So we would go ahead, and because it's 33, we reference the 30 to 39 base to kill number row here under the variable penetration to kill formula, and we roll a 2d6. Now we rolled 4 and 5. I'm using 4 as my first die and 5 as my second die, so I subtract 5 from 4 and get -1, and add that to my base to kill number, which is 33, which makes that 32. So the shell was made slightly less effective. Then we would go here to our vehicle unit card, and we would find the enemy unit, the Leopard 1. We struck it in the hull front, which is its hull front against kinetic energy. Its kinetic energy defense is 14. So we would subtract 32 from 14, and I don't have to tell you that roll is high enough, or the base to kill number is high enough from 14 that any roll that we make, aside from 12, which is an automatic no effect, would kill that vehicle. And we rolled 10, and that kills the Leopard 1, because you have to roll less than the base to kill number minus the armored vehicle's armor protection. So that would be 18. 18 is the number that we need to roll less than, so 17 and below. 10 is certainly below 17, so we would kill this Leopard 1, and we would make a note of it on our combat track sheet, where all our crew and fuel and ammunition tracking and that sort of thing is listed on. If you're being attacked by a vehicle, you follow the same procedure, depending on if the vehicle has multiple different types of ammunition. For instance, the Leopard 1 has armor-piercing discarding sabot and high-explosive anti-tank. This rocket tank destroyer, this anti-tank guided missile tank destroyer here, only has an anti-tank guided missile, to my knowledge. So it does not Yes, it only has one type, the anti-tank guided missile, which has a base to kill number of 63 chemical energy. So you don't need to... That's the only type of ammo that it fires. But if a vehicle has multiple ammunition types, like this armor-piercing discarding sabot and high explosive anti-tank, then when you're making your 2-hit roll, like so, you would reference the second die number for what ammunition the vehicle's actually firing at you. So if there was a leopard that was firing at us, we rolled... that's our 2-hit roll, and that's a high 2-hit roll, by the way, 10. It probably would hit, depending on the range and if we're moving or if we have hold down status. Your tank never has woods, or it never occupies woods or buildings or that sort of thing. But we rolled a 4, which means that it's going to use armor-piercing discarding sabot, so we reference this ammunition type, as opposed to high explosive anti-tank, which they use on a 2 or a 3. So this has been a simple and hopefully concise and understandable overview of what is contained in On the Way, how the game plays. Everything is explained in the rules, of course. I tried to keep things comprehensive but understandable to facilitate an ease of play. I hope the game is interesting and entertaining. I think it is. I have a lot of fun playtesting and making this, and I want to thank you for viewing the video and for your interest in the game, and of course want to wish peace upon you and your friends and your family, and success to you, and thank you for checking out the video. And of course, if you have any further burning questions, anything that's inconclusive, hard to understand, anything that if I've made some sort of mistake, you can of course go to the Board Game Geek forum for On the Way, or ask in the on Wargame Vault or in the comments of this video. So thank you very much, and please do take care.